We see this as a transformational project that will uplift this community as a whole, not in the sense of gentrification, because that's on the other side of the Bronx, but in this particular area where the museum is, it's all about how do we uplift the people who live here.
Rocky, thank you for sitting down with me. I really appreciate you talking about the Hip Hop Museum, which is coming in December.
Yeah, soft opening.
Very exciting.
Yep.
Very exciting. Um, let's start a little bit with about hip hop. Now, I just kind of broadly speaking, I don't know a lot, but I know that it started in 1973 here in the Bronx.
It did start in the Bronx. 1973 is debatable.
Oh,
Yeah, so
okay.
we're gonna inform everybody about the true history of when and how hip hop started. So it's going to be
Some people are claiming 73, others are saying
so
later.
there's no dispute that Kool Herc is the father of hip hop, but was that the first party, right? So we are going to explore different research findings that the team has acquired through investigative work to really get to the true story of where hip hop started and how it started.
Well, but no doubt that it started here in the Bronx.
No doubt that it started here in the Bronx.
So a fitting place to have the museum.
100%. When I first started this journey 16 years ago, I was looking at all different types of locations. And it took several years in order for us to actually find this particular location at the Bronx Point. But there was interest from other cities when they heard about, me looking for, land and property. They're like, oh, we got vacant buildings here in Newark and vacant buildings in Washington, D.C. And I was like, nah, it's got to be in the Bronx.
You got to be where the home is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is it correct to say that hip hop came out of like a kind of a socioeconomic feeling, like a lack of investment in the community and some frustration?
In the 1970s, New York City was economically depressed. And the Bronx, South Bronx in particular, was in distress. There was a project that really disrupted the way of life for many people here in the South Bronx, and that project was the development of the Cross Bronx Expressway by Robert Moses. Before the Cross Bronx allowed for people to travel from east to west through the Bronx, there were factories, there was a middle class that was thriving in that part of the Bronx. And when that development came, they displaced a lot of people who had the means to travel north and go to Westchester. And the folks that did have the means that stayed behind were really relegated to living in public housing and tenements. And the landlords who didn't see a future for their, real estate business decided that it would be better if they burnt some buildings down. So they hired gang members to actually torch their own buildings to collect insurance money. And that left a stigma on the Bronx because people just recognized it as rubble and they saw the burning buildings and they even got, labeled the Bronx is burning.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yep. So from that desperation came this culture called hip hop. The kids were trying to find a way to become visible, because they were living amongst drugs, gang violence, economic depression, and really didn't have any way to enjoy life as a teenager. So the kids decided to do these outdoor park jams. And the park jams brought people from all different parts of the Bronx together and listen to music. Sometimes it was very peaceful and sometimes it wasn't very peaceful. But that culture started to develop artistically. The dancing, the graffiti, all started to come together as one symbol of free expression.
Was there a certain amount of joy to that? So a place where they could find the joy that they didn't have around them?
100%, the music coming together allowed the teenagers to put all the troubles behind them even if it was just for a couple hours, they got creative. They plugged into the light poles because there was no electricity. They had to find a way to get power to their equipment, their speakers outdoors in these, playgrounds. They used turntables as instruments. Grandmaster Flash and Theodore started to learn how to move the record back and forth without lifting the needle, and it created the scratching sound. And the dancers were being entertained by the DJs who didn't play the entire record. They only played like these little small break beats, what they call the get down part or the instrumental parts of these songs. And those instrumental pieces were mixed back and forth continuously. And that created the excitement and the energy. And the kids created these new dance styles. All this was happening while disco here in New York was king. Because in the 70s, you had Don Summers, Giorgio Moroder, the Bee Gees. Disco was king, but not in the streets of the Bronx. It was this new sound that was vibrating, that started to percolate. And later, promoters and independent record company producers saw that there was something happening in the streets of the Bronx, and they started to commercialize it.
And when did that commercialization start? When you think,
1979.
okay, so it had been kind of organic for
Six,
5 or more years,
5 more
depending
years.
on when your history starts, right? But organic, but then it became commercial. And when it became commercial, I mean, it really spread
It spread
quickly.
like wildfire because it was different. It was brand new. It was creating a paradigm shift in what people thought was actually music. Talking over records, not supposed to be done. You grow up listening to the Delphonics and the OJs, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and all these beautiful groups that had bands. And now there's no band. There's just a DJ and a guy rapping on the mic. So it was very disruptive. So the people who were the gatekeepers of, black music back then didn't really see hip hop as being feasible. They thought it was going to be more of a fad. Here today, going tomorrow.
Kind of like disco.
Kind of like disco. Well, disco had a little bit of a
A long tail on it.
long tail on it, but they thought that hip hop wasn't going to last more than 2 weeks. So now here we are, going on almost 53 years of hip hop history and culture, and it's thriving all around the world.
Preserve your culture and your community, which as you gave me a tour, and part of what excited me about it is I felt like there was going to be a sense of community here. People could connect, but not only kind of the big world, but here in the Bronx. So tell me a little bit about the building that we're in and the museum's going to be in.
Yep. So this building is called the Bronx Point. It's a mixed-use development project. On top of us, we have 100% affordable housing. So there's 542 apartments on top of the museum. The museum serves as the cultural anchor, not just for the building, but the entire community. There are other nonprofit spaces. There's an organization called Bronx Works that is also here at Bronx Point, and they basically provide employment resources and other social services to the people who live on top of the museum. The museum, when we open our doors, we will probably have a staff of around 80 to 90 folks working here. So our intention is to hire locally when we can, and to find the most qualified people to work in the gift shop, work in retail, work in the theater, work in guest relations, work in our educational department. So we have many different employment opportunities that are going to be shared with the general community in the very near future. This particular part of the Bronx, the Mott Haven section, is one of the poorest congressional districts, not just in the state of New York, but in the entire country. So having this museum here, we know that it's going to transform the economic mobility of the folks in this community, because other businesses are starting to move here. New schools are being opened here. We have the Success Academy, which is opening the brand new charter school right across the street from us. We'll give local artists an avenue to showcase their talent and sell their artwork inside the museum. So we see this as a transformational project that will uplift this community as a whole, not in the sense of gentrification, because that's on the other side of the drugs. But in this particular area where the museum is, it's all about how do we uplift the people who live here. So there are many other local nonprofits. There are educational schools, elementary, middle school, high schools around us. There's a Hostos Community College right up the street. And giving those folks, the high school students and the college students, a chance to come in and learn about how hip hop created this amazing entrepreneurial spirit that allows people to be creative and use their creative talents to create a new way of life for themselves and for their families. And that's what hip hop is all about.
And you're gonna have some programs. I saw there was some programs like a filmmaking program, other kind of workforce development, and you mentioned Bronx work in the building itself. How are you kind of curating that? How are you pulling that together?
So we have a very uh, productive and creative team. Our My Cameras, My Weapons program is our summer youth program that we created to really give kids a safe space during the summertime so that they don't have to hang out in the street and get caught into, potential gang activity and that is prevalent here in New York City. So we give them a safe space. They come in for 6 to 8 weeks during the summertime, and we teach them photojournalism and filmmaking. And then at the end of that course, they create their own projects, and we give them another space that we have across the street to exhibit their final product. And it's a great way for those kids to learn that they don't have to be just a rapper or a graffiti artist or dancer. There's other forms of creativity using cameras as a tool to express themselves.
Are you gonna be able to connect them or hope to connect them to maybe that next step? I know there's been some programs in. I live in Los Angeles, and there's a program called Street Lights, which does they connect them to film sets for these filmmakers.
Yeah. So that's our intention is to give them a new pathway for career opportunities. But we kind of like leave it to the kids to see if that's something that they want to do. Right. But they are teamed up with hip hop celebrities, people who are very successful in filmmaking and photography. And they share their stories of how they became a photographer and a filmmaker, hopefully to leave some sort of inspiration behind so that they see that, oh, wow, a camera can really help me make this kind of money. Yes. So, that's part of the process is we don't want to push them in a particular direction. We just want to expose them to these opportunities.
And you mentioned that this is not about gentrification, which is happens often. When I can name many neighborhoods around the country where this has happened. How has the community welcomed you? Are they excited about what you've got going on?
Oh, super excited. I I can't tell you how excited just the people who live upstairs. Every time they see me walking around the building, like, oh man, we can't wait for you to open your doors. Uh, you know, the anticipation for this museum is such at a high level that it's going to benefit not just the folks that work for the museum, but it's going to benefit everyone that's here because all the major museums are in the city. You got MoMA, you have Whitney, you have the Met, you have the Guggenheim, and yes, the Bronx has got its own nice things. We have the Bronx Zoo, we have the Botanical Gardens, we have Yankee Stadium, we have the Bronx Children's Museum. But this museum is going to represent something that rises to the same level as the Louvre and MoMA. So that's the expectation that we have from this museum. And because it's going to attract so many people to this community, all the surrounding businesses will benefit. The small food courts, the restaurants, the gift shops, all the retailers, maybe even some of the other nonprofits and some of the schools will benefit. And I'm just excited.
Well, you're this is a dream, 16 years in the making for you.
Mhm.
You're this close. I saw the pride in your face as you went upstairs and saw some of the project progress.
you could just see the joy in your face.
We started with zero, and I had to put my own money into this project in the very beginning. I had to sacrifice time with my family to make this project happen. I'm a kid who was born and raised in the Bronx. So to actually see that this has become a project that will define my legacy is something that I want to basically be able to share with the world.
Thank you, Rocky.
Thank you.